Afternoon and welcome to the August 2025 New Ulm Safety Commission meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. First up, we have in the packet, you should have the meeting minutes from the March 6th meeting. Are there any additions or amendments to it, or otherwise I'd be looking for a motion?
I would move to accept the March meeting minutes.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. On to new business. We have some guests from SRF Consulting Group here that would like to have a presentation on the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan.
Thank you all. So I'm here again is to talk through the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan and talk through several components. My name is Nicole Bitson with SRF Consulting. I'm serving as the project manager for the development of the Safety Action Plan. You'll see on the screen too that there are several others that are leading different components of the Safety Action Plan. Jono is here today to talk through engagement and some of the activities that are underway. And then just a little bit about myself too. I've been with SRF now for over 8 years, working on several safety action plans across the Midwest. So working with various MPOs, counties, and cities to do this, to assess and evaluate roadway network, make recommendations, and work with different communities to identify projects to implement. So again, very excited here to talk through those different items. We're also going to go through just overall the SS4A grant program and then a project schedule. We'll also go through engagement. Jono's going to go through several slides of that. And then we'll go each through the safety action plan components as well. So first slide here is on the SS4A grant program. Funding for this safety action plan came through the bipartisan infrastructure law. It's a $5 billion allocation over 5 years. It began in 2022, and the final year is going to be in 2026. So there is another opportunity for funding here in the next year. New Ulm was awarded the $200,000 back in 2024. I'm sorry, and so that is one of the developments here of the Safety Action Plan. The purpose is to promote safety, employ low-cost, high-impact safety strategies. It's really aimed to address those severe crashes along your roadway network. As mentioned, there's several funding opportunities here now in 2026. So opportunities to go through. So in addition to your safety action plan, there's supplemental activities that you can pursue that enhance or improve an action plan. So that there's specific safe routes to school processes, speed studies, other very specific activities to support the safety action plan. That's an area you can pursue. Also demonstration activities. So those are temporary projects. So if there's a specific location that you would like to implement a temporary project before you go and build, that's also an option here in 2026. And then the third option is an implementation project specific. So that is an actual going through, moving construction and doing those kinds of infrastructure projects here. So several different opportunities. As mentioned, the goal of a safety action plan, there's several different required components, but one of the major is to having a commitment to eliminate roadway fatalities and serious injuries. So that's one of the items we'll talk through here in the next coming slides. Also, our role is to identify roadway safety issues that are across your network, not only on city roads, but all roads across the city. We also are looking to engage the community, so we had an event here today that we'll talk through. Evaluate and prioritize potential safety improvements here to implement over the next several years, update existing policies and plans, and then also identify potential funding sources here in the future to get money to implement all of those great safety projects. There are 7 required safety action plan components required by USDOT. So the 7 are a planning structure, engagement and collaboration, leadership commitment and goal setting, safety analysis, strategy and project selection, policy and process changes, and progress and transparency. We'll go through each of those components, but those are the 7 main chapters that you'll see through your safety action plan and once that's developed. The overall schedule here, the final plan and draft will be available here mid-2026. We're in that first box with the leadership commitment and safety analysis as well as the engagement. So we're just really getting going on all of those steps, starting the safety analysis and also the engagement activities as well. Then here during the winter, we're going to be developing those safety project recommendations, your high priority locations as well, and talking with you all about those areas and policy recommendations. I'm going to now turn it over to Jono to go through our engagement slides.
Right. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you all for having us here this afternoon. I'm going to talk about first our steering committee group, and then about the great engagement that we're doing. I was just over at the fair earlier today, as you know, listening to the great accordion music and engaging with folks. But before I get to that, I'll talk about the planning structure that we have associated with this with the steering committee. So it's a requirement of this funding to have some sort of steering committee for the work. This steering committee provides oversight of the plan development itself, and just kind of a guiding group to provide insight, ideas, guidance, feedback, et cetera, as we move forward. And also kind of build that buy-in once the plan is adopted and you want to implement it. So all important components. Here's a list of the members. I won't go through them all, but we have a solid list of community members. Worked closely with Joe to develop these, and well, actually, he gave us the names. And so you see all the folks on there. I think a few of you are on here. So thank you for the service, and we'll be getting that group going here very soon in the coming weeks to kind of kick that off and start the steering committee process. Public engagement is underway. We have both in-person and virtual components to that engagement. The engagement is focused on 2 things: educating people about what is this process, why does it matter, and getting their feedback about priorities, issues, needs, and concerns. So the major ways we're doing that, we have a mapping activity that's on the SS4A project website. We have a couple comments on there, but I heard folks talking about getting the word out about that just before this meeting started, and we really encourage everybody to just tell your friends and neighbors about it, encourage them to go if they're able to use a webpage to do that. It's a really great way to get really geo-targeted specific issues, and it's the best way we're gonna get to know like really specific things, like I saw this X, Y, or Z happen here, or I see it consistently, or whatever that is. That's really helpful information. So that's a really important component. And then we have our in-person activities, which are meant in some ways to mirror that online mapping tool. So we have a map that we have for in-person engagement. And we've been to 2 events so far, the New Ulm Night Out, which was very well attended. Spoke to, I think, more than 75 folks. It was our total estimate. We got a lot of data points. And then the fair today, talked to about 50 folks. And we have 2 more events coming up. We're going to be at Herman Fest, going to be at Oktoberfest as well. And at those events, I'll show you what the materials are. And then in addition to that, we're doing some promotions. We worked with the city to get some social media out there. I think we'll kind of try to continue to do that as we kind of monitor what we're getting on the mapping activity. Maybe kind of consistently put that out there, put that front of mind to try and get as many folks to interact with that as possible. This is just a little bit more about that. So I mentioned the in-person activities. So we have a flyer, we have, and that has a QR code that goes to the mapping activity. We also have that the survey, which is that mapping activity, the presentation boards, which I'll talk about in a bit, and a couple of just kids activities, some interactive things that we deploy as well where it makes sense. Quickly, just going to highlight our activities for the pop-ups. since when you're connecting with people in community, we've really found it really beneficial to have a really quick hitting thing that, you know, you're walking by, you didn't think you're going to talk about safety today on streets, and you say, well, you get 30 seconds with somebody, right? The best way to deal with that is to have a real quick question and just a quick democracy type thing where you're voting for what your priorities are. And that's what this pop-up activity item does. It just highlights a couple of key, what are your commuting safety concerns and issues, highlights some of what those big buckets are that were kind of common ones, and then also a space for other comments, other ideas, other concerns. We found people use the gamut. So, like for example, today there were a lot of folks that put their put their dot on safe intersections for walking and biking. We saw a lot of those, but there were also a good number of like other comments about specific intersections, on Broadway and Second or whatever it is, and so. It's a good way to get a quick blush. It's not going to inform everything, but it's helpful to kind of see where people are and what they're thinking about when they, just pass by and think, what does street safety look like for me? Here we have a mapping activity, share your travel story. So this is a bit more about trying to kind of get to understanding how people get around in the city. Obviously, we're going to get a lot of folks, and we've seen this, a lot of folks driving places, but that's not always been the case. Seeing people that are, coming from different spots that have decided to walk or to bike. And so it's an interesting little activity that kind of works in a city of this size where you're able to kind of see where people are coming from and how they decided to get to, the county fair, for example. Yeah. And last slide from me here. So community needs and public engagement. These are some important questions overall that we're kind of considering when we're getting the feedback. Also certainly open to any thoughts or ideas that this group has on some of these topics, but what are some of the barriers to addressing transportation safety in your community? We're going to be discussing that with the steering committee. And any feedback now or later on that topic is welcome. Examples of transportation needs commonly brought up in the community. We're seeing, for example, today there was a lot of specific comments about signage needs. People really in their mind about, well, we need stop signs X, Y, or Z place, or yield signs, for example. That kind of raised its head today. And then the third question for you to think about as we're thinking about getting the word out here is just other ways you think that our team can reach residents in the community. We're very welcome to trying to get any guidance on that. We're fortunate to have some really great events that Joe has suggested that have been really successful so far, and we'll continue to do that. But if there are other things that you think, gosh, if you just reached out to this organization or whatever it is that could help boost the wiki map or something, or the online comment map, that would also be helpful. I'll just pause. Any questions or thoughts, comments from anybody? Okay. All right. Turn it back over to you.
All right, so through the other components, so in addition to engagement activities, there's also a requirement for leadership and goal setting. So you're required to adopt a vision to aim to zero, and then having a specific year of when you're going to reach that goal, and then a specific percentage reduction. So on this slide too, you'll see some examples of other Vision Zero goals, other SS4A goals as well across the state. So for example, there's this statewide Minnesota Strategic Highway Safety Plan. They have a percentage reduction. So it's the no more than 225 traffic deaths and no more than 980 serious injuries statewide. That is their goal here over the next 5 years. Then there's the Minneapolis Vision Zero Action Plan. This one's more aggressive, where it's zero traffic deaths and severe injuries on streets city streets by 2027. The city of Elk River has zero on Elk River streets as well by 2035. So there's various ways to develop these goals, and will help identify kind of where your benchmark is, and then some potential years and items for you guys to evaluate as well. We'll again determine what's feasible, what feels ambitious with this group here, and then share with the goals for this committee to adopt here in the future. Then the next piece is our crash analysis, which is really part of the bulk of a safety action plan, along with the engagement and what we hear from the community members. Our crash analysis is split into really two different phases. The first phase looks at historical crash data, so over 5 years. We're going to focus on 2020 to 2024, since not all of 2025 is available yet. And then we look at those to identify trends, look at where the characteristics of those crashes have occurred, and then from there we map them and then identify risk factors. So it's really looking at where have these crashes occurred to then determine where can they potentially occur in the future, because they share those similar trends and characteristics. From there, we'll develop that high priority list. This analysis will be accompanied, though, with the engagement activity. So where people say specifically on those maps are important, because those are the near misses, items that we don't always capture with the historical crashes. And so that information will also be incorporated and blended into that high priority list. We do have some general crash data here today as well, just an overall, make sure that there's different jargon in our next couple slides. So I wanted to make sure we cover severe crashes versus non-severe crashes. So we do follow the CABCO scale. It's a nationally known severity crash determined by USDOT. Fatal and serious injuries are all in that severe bucket, and then those non-severe are non-incapacitating, so B, C's, and O's, and they also include property damage only. So you'll see this in the next following slides as well. So overall, and I apologize, I know it's a little small. So there are 655 crashes that occurred between 2020 to 2024. 2% of those are your severe crashes. Here in New Ulm, 15 are severe, and there was 1 fatality between that 5-year range. So even though this SS4A Safety Action Plan really hones in on severe crashes, we're going to look at all different severities and make sure we believe that those that are near misses and those non-incapacitating or less non-severe crashes are just as important and gives context. So all that information will be used. This is a breakdown by year of crashes. So from 2020 to 2024, those little dotted lines show the general trend line. So it's looking at the slope. So those you do see that they're increasing between the bars themselves are the severe crashes, and then that green line graph are those non-severe. What we typically see too is that they follow a similar proportion, that those non-severe crashes are higher above the bars, and that's something that we typically see as well. But just noting, there was a spike in 2023 with non-severe or with severe crashes. There is a slight decrease here in 2024, but overall that trend line is increasing from year to year that we're seeing within the city of New Ulm.
Did you by chance go pre-COVID to see if that trend line that you saw in 23, 24 was more consistent with pre-COVID? Because you got that big drop in there with COVID, which skews this number.
We do. So yeah, you're right. The slope won't be as significant. We have not gone back those, but we, as a part of your safety action plan, we typically have a graph that shows that 10-year time frame. Okay. So it goes the overall trend, and we also include kind of that paragraph or description of what nationally everyone experienced with 2020 and how the crashes affected really 2020 and 2021. But overall, there has been a more significance of severe crashes ever since 2020, just overall higher speeds, more impaired driving, more crashes also with vulnerable roadway users as well. So that's a trend that we're continuing to see post. Then the next slide here goes by mode. Again, kind of what we're looking at specifically are where are those bar graphs over the top of the line graph, which is your non-severe, and that shows the proportionality too of. It shows that your motorcycle, cyclists, and pedestrians have a higher percentage of being in a severe crash compared to your automobile and heavy vehicle. Those are your most vulnerable. Again, understanding though too that there are those crashes tend to be underreported if they're near misses or little fender benders. Typically, bikes and pedestrians just kind of walk away and say everything's good. So those numbers are a little higher than what they probably are in real life, but understanding regardless, they are still your vulnerable roadway users. A simple crash can become a severe crash very quickly and easily. And so those are one of our focuses too, as we go along with our safety action plan, to just identify good projects and recommendations concerning vulnerable roadway users. This next one, again, tough to see. This looks at all of the different contributing factors in a crash. One crash can have multiple contributing factors here. You'll see that typically too, all of those that are in that blue dotted line are where the top emphasis areas to focus on. So for example, you'll see impaired driving. I apologize, I'm gonna turn and look behind me as I speak. So intersection related, older driver, and young driver all have high numbers of total crashes. And then those that are in the yellow bar graph, those again are seeing those that are more at risk. So they have a higher percentage of being in a severe crash when in a crash. So those are those cyclists, impaired drivers, motorcyclists, pedestrians, those that are speeding or unbelted and unlicensed show up as top contributing factors. So again, this just shows as we move along with your safety action plan, identify different policies and infrastructure recommendations to make sure we're identifying ones that really target these groups. Next on this slide is a preliminary draft high injury network. High injury network looks at concentrations of severe crashes for all modes to identify where are your most severe crashes occurring. This is that historical analysis. And in the blue lines are the results of the high injury network. This is still in review, but you'll see that the North Garden Street by the cemetery and just south as well are showing up, along with Highway 14 and 68. There's a couple of those east-west kind of cross streets as well, but these areas, again, are locations that we'll want to move forward with identifying potential recommendations for your guys' consideration and projects in the future. So those components all make up that historical crash evaluation, what has occurred in those past 5 years. We'll also be digging into the crash data further to develop, this is that systemic or proactive analysis to identify your high priority locations. These are new areas that may not have a severe crash that has occurred, but potentially can have a crash occur in the future. And so we'll develop a list of these locations and make recommendations as well for those. This slide just gives an example of how we'll develop those recommendations. So typically too, we'll have very specific crash or roadway characteristics that show up as high risk, and then we'll determine a toolkit for your consideration that if there's a project here that's going to be occurring in the future and you know that it meets these specific characteristics, that maybe those specific or project recommendations may be considered to be implemented as well. And then one of our last pieces is the policy and process change. So these are just a couple of the policies that will be reviewed as a part of the safety action plan. In addition to those that are on this slide as well, we're going to be evaluating pedestrian crossing specific policies to help determine and develop a policy around when potentially RRFBs or different signage is implemented. That way, just to help have a policy to resort back to and make sure it's defensible, consistent application. So we'll be working with Joe and all of you all too to help develop that. Then finally, this is all compiled into a plan, into a report. Each of those components will also include a progress and transparency. The steering committee, as Jono mentioned, they're going to be help to drive and make sure that the city reaches their goal that's determined as a part of the plan. And so those items will be incorporated in the plan as well. And then just next steps, we're going to continue to engage the community at those events here in early fall. We'll continue to complete our crash analysis. We'll finalize the high injury network. We're meeting with our steering committee here in the next couple weeks. And then we'll work also to identify the city's vision and goal. So that can be in progress and in adoption here at a future meeting. Any questions?
Good stuff.
Yeah, nicely
Very
done.
good. I look
Awesome.
forward to being part of that.
Great. Thank you all for having us.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, moving on now to next topic here. Request from David Spencer for a stop or yield sign.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So within your packet, I have a staff summary report in there as well, but Mr. Spencer lives at the corner of Second North and State Street, and he's one that reported those near misses that Nicole was talking about that, don't necessarily get reported. As you see, there's only 2 accidents here at the intersection in the last 5 years. But he said he has witnessed on numerous accounts, well, actually 1 accident that's not in the crash report. So either when I ran the report, it wasn't in there, or it was property damage only, and the police did not file that report with the main crash. But he said, in addition to that, there's been numerous near misses at the intersection. So he felt he wanted the commission to review this. And so I compiled the information for you today. So first set of photos here is we are on the west side of the intersection looking east. So you can see this is, I tried to take 2 pictures at each intersection as you would approach it, looking left, looking right. Don't really see issues on this leg of the intersection, but as you will see as we get to the looking west leg, there are some sightline issues. Looking north, this is a street, which I'll call Second North, referencing Second North. I mean, it's parked on every day during the weekday. There's numerous people who park on that street, so you can see. I went out middle of the day, middle of the morning actually, and this is what an approaching motorist would see, especially looking to the right, looking for that traffic coming up the hill in the top photo there. So there's consistently vehicles parked, and that combined with the hill does create some sightline issues there on this corner of the intersection. Bottom photo is looking to the west, and really there's no sightline obstruction at that location. So I have 2 sets of photos for this particular side of the intersection. So again, this is working towards the west on Second North Street, so coming up the hill from Broadway. As you can see, approaching, looking to the north when vehicles are parked, and also looking to the south. So I think this photo really on the bottom here with that blue vehicle really shows the sightline obstruction that exists. And that car is legally parked. It's set back appropriately. It's not parked too close to the intersection or to the crosswalk. So I lucked out on the day I went out taking pictures. That's kind of what I was looking for, because that's what the concerned citizen kind of reported was the sightline issues with parked vehicles. And then this is just another probably 20 feet towards the intersection where it does clear up, but moving in a vehicle that 20 feet happens in a relatively short period of time.
Even though you have the setback, which is, again, they're all parking there.
Yep.
You still look at where that Tahoe or wherever the GMC is parked there by the St. Paul sign, put another vehicle on the other side of that. They're both, or you can park up to 3 cars in that setback vehicle.
Yeah, so, yeah, again, I kind of lucked out the day we went looking or taking the photos for the staff report here. And then north side of the intersection looking south, there's really no obstructions on that leg. Also included the crash reports are come in a variety of different methods. I included the lawn form reports just because they provide a little more detail, and because we only had the 2 reportables within there, so it kind of really provides the in-depth information that the police department adds in those reports. The short forms are really just a small snippet, so I felt it was important for you to read through and get all the information on the 2 incidents that were there at the intersection. Won't read through them today, but they provide the diagrams and everything in there as well. Then the last...
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Last item in there is just the guidance from the Minnesota Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So I tried to highlight those applications for stop and yield signs, the guidance, and where it's applicable and what the warrants are. So you had that information as well. So that is the staff report summary. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are you with this? I mean, obviously, you know, your pictures point out a lot of that stuff, and if anyone goes by there and takes kind of their own view of it, you can see where that definitely coming up the hill would be more obstructed than the other three ways into the intersection that's coming up to that crest and then trying to figure it out. So is that where you're proposing, you know, like a recommendation on a yield sign on, you know, Second Street there?
So, I tried to not steer you guys in one direction or another, but if it were me in your position, I would lean towards a yield sign as opposed to a stop sign.
Yeah.
I see this as kind of a similar situation as Third North and State,
Yep.
and they have yield control there. That intersection is a little bit different because it's building structures and
Right.
vegetation that are more the obstruction
Right.
than it is parked vehicles on the incline. And the hill's a little more steep here at Second than it is at Third as well, so.
Yeah, and the reason I asked for clarity, if, you know, if I would make a motion for a recommendation, that's what I'm asking for, to say, would you put it on Second North on both
Yes,
sides?
yep.
You know, coming up the hill and going down and then leaving State open.
Yep, and even though it's not, there's not that obstruction on the west side of the intersection, I feel for uniformity,
Yep. You
it's
gotta put it
important to
on
do both legs, yep.
Because then you're teaching that traffic, you know, that's both sides. If
Yep.
anyone's going down Second, they're doing it on both times.
Yeah, I feel in any application, whether it's stop or yield, I believe the uniformity
Yep.
on both sides of the intersection is important.
Question. Is there a reason why you would go more toward the yield versus the stop? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so if you read through, I'll pull up that stop guidance. That's really, that's what I'd base that recommendation off of.
Yeah.
Is that, one, we don't have nearly the traffic volume. We don't even have 10% of that traffic volume on those streets. And I don't feel like a stop is warranted at all times of the day. So those are kind of the two points there where I was like, in my opinion, that the stop isn't the warrant.
Yeah.
And it's not a warrant that's met either, so.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep,
Yeah, the
good
guideline-
question, yep.
The guideline does help add a lot of clarity why you would go one direction versus another, so. I mean, I would have no problem making, you know, or a motion or recommendation on putting dual yield signs on Second North and then leaving State Street flow as it is. At least this is a starting point, appeases Mr. Spencer and his ask as well, that something has been done. Because he even says that in his write-up that, you know, he's asking for one or the other. So, like Joey said, you know, it doesn't meet the full recommendation of a full stop sign, but the yield is definitely warranted.
Are you wanting to make that as a motion?
That would be my motion. That's why I asked Joey for clarity where his was, so that my motion could match up with that. Because that's, after reading everything and going through the intersection myself, that seems to be the common sense approach.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend a yield sign on Second North. Any further discussion on that? No? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. It is the end of our agenda. No more to talk about. Our next meeting is scheduled to be September 4th, 2025. And with that, we will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.